Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to do is something that I wanted to do for a while, but never quite got around to it, and once I did, I found it to be a little more challenging than I thought. What I wanted to do was to take 5 of the top best-selling watches and look at them in terms of, well, what might be an alternative. Sometimes the alternative is more expensive, sometimes less expensive, but they were sort of looking at things in a different way. And the other thing I found out is that a lot of the watches that are very popular, I like. I mean, it's not that here's some ones I don't like because they're popular and we're going to have some alternatives, but just really look at some alternatives from some of the what might be something that, no, I think I'll get this instead of that. Let's start with Rolex. I I'm not sort of, you might say, into Rolex. They're nice watches and so on and so forth. Uh, they're very complex in terms not of the watch itself, but rather the whole culture that surrounds it, especially with watch collectors. So I thought I'd start off with one of the most popular Rolexes, and Rolex itself was one of the most popular watches, with a Submariner. Now, I happen to like green, and so I was going through the catalog and found a green one, and I thought, this looks nice. And it's 10,800, which is not cheap, but there. Then I found out, oh, this is one they call the Hulk. And so I thought, well, I'll see what the used prices are. And the used price, I found the best used price was $16,500, almost like there were a lot for $17,000 and more. Now, the least expensive Rolex Submariner I found was almost 8,000, 7,900. It wasn't the Hulk, the one with the green bezel. So anyway, I looked at that. I said, boy, this is a nice watch, and I can understand why people like it. But let's see what some other alternatives are. And I thought, well, I'll look at divers, some other divers, I guess, in terms of categories. And let's face it, when we talk about the owners of a Submariner with the divers, are not divers. They're desk divers, maybe, or maybe the guys who, when they jump in a swimming pool, they don't have to want to worry about their watch. So, and there's nothing against Rolexes, but you go to a dive shop and you're not going to see a Rolex in there. You're not going to see any of the watches that we like. You're going to see real dive watches, a different kind of thing. And most of them are either smart watches or quartz. So, anyway. Now, so I looked and looked and looked and looked. I found an interesting one called Marine Tourpier. The Marine Tourpier by Ulysse Nardin is a dive watch, a similar price. It's $9,800, and it's roughly around the same size and a lot of other features. It does have something I do like that the Submariner doesn't, and that's a power reserve indicator up at 12 o'clock. And on the other hand, the Rolex, I know that a lot of Rolex owners don't care for the Cyclops, but it does make seeing the date a lot easier. And compared to the Tourpier, it's sort of a little one. I'm not crazy about having dates anyway. But I thought that might be something to look at, and it turns out that the more I looked at the Tourpier, I thought, this is a pretty nice watch. So anyway, so that's the first one I thought I'd look at. Yeah, nothing against the Rolex. But the culture getting that one. By the way, too, let me just say this. This is one of the interesting things about Rolex. If you buy one new for $10,800, that would be the way to buy it. All right, it doesn't make any sense to buy them used because you're paying a sort of an upcharge on them. Most other watches, the thing to do, in fact, like with this Tourpierre, would be to get one used. Get one for what I found was $42.91 instead of $9,800. You can get the same watch. It is pre-owned and for almost half the price. In fact, it is half the price. And so this is the usual kind of economics that I look at. But boy, I tell you, Rolex has got a whole different economy to it. Okay, moving right along. Now, another one, it turns out another one I happen to like, is Omega. Omega. The Speedmaster Moonwatch Professional is, I think, their most popular watch that they have. I found one, and they have a modified. It's not the original movement. They have another movement, and then they got, because Swatch decided to put silicone hairsprings in it. They have a silicone hairspring, unlike the original Moonwatch that had no such thing. And this is a watch that would be hard to find an alternative for, and I'll tell you why. It has its own fame, so to speak. I mean, here was a watch, something pretty close to this, that they took to the moon with them because it was such a good watch. Now, in looking for an alternative to that, I said, well, you got to find something that's famous in another way. And the way my fame that I see is in terms of the watchmaker. And this is immediately came to mind was the Maurice Lacroix masterpiece, Le Chronograph. Now, the reason that this is something I don't think they still make them anymore, but there are some, I mean, enough of them around on pre-owned. I found one, the best price I found one was $46.90. Now, that's a lot for Maurice Lacroix used. And why is it such a good buy? Because this particular watch has a movement that was developed for Maurice Lacroix by Andreas Streller. Now, if you go to Andreas Streller's site and take a look at his watches, my God, they're north of 100,000. So here you have a watch. It's a really neat watch for a lot less than that, and its notoriety is not because somebody took it to the moon or to Podunk, but rather because it has this incredible movement maker. Okay, now this next one is another very, very difficult one for me. My introduction into watch collection and luxury watch collection was a Patek Philippe Calatrava, and I had that for years, and finally realized I wasn't wearing it, and I sold it, but I still liked it. I mean, it was a wonderful watch. Now, in 2009, they put in their silicone hairsprings, which for me spoiled it, but that's me, not everybody else in the watch world. Now, my favorite Calatrava is this 6119R. The reason for it is hand wound, and it's pretty clean. I mean, it's a three-handed watch. You got the hour, minute, and small seconds, gold, but extremely expensive, $32,110. I think that may be, if not the entry-level price, one of the entry-level price, 39 millimeter in rose gold. And so I started looking around. I thought, there are other ones from sort of the same sort of popular high-end watches, like Vacheron Constantin, their Patrimony is an easy one that would be a substitute for it. But I was looking for something that would be sort of more off the beaten path, so to speak. This Piaget Altiplano Origin is one I found, and I really like it. It's noted for its thinness. It's a very thin watch, and one of the things about Calatrava type of watches is their thinness. And this one, not only is it thin, it's an automatic, and in order to do that, they have to use a micro rotor and so forth, thin and self-winding. Now, here's the irony: I'm the one that happens to like hand wound, like the Patek Philippe. And while I have some self-winding watches, they're not necessarily my favorite. This one is really nice though, and it's a very different one. You have the date at 9 o'clock, which is unusual. Most of them, and then you have the small seconds at between 4 and 5 o'clock, which is another thing. And it's sort of unique, and it's sort of a cool watch. I thought, and it's not quite $10,000, but what, about $8,000 less than the Patek Philippe. Really, and the Patek Philippe, like I said, it's got silicon in it. That one may not. Somebody told me it did, but the way that Patek Philippe advertises, they all say they always identify the silicon hairspring, but this one they didn't, and I was hopeful, but somebody told me now they put it in there too. I don't know why. Nobody asked me. Okay, here are a couple other watches. Now this is going a very different direction. This is going from Breitling Nav Timer, one of the most popular watches around. And one of the things I was never crazy about Breitling is that, and their lower priced watches, they'll have like a movement, like this one has a movement of called a Breitling 32. And this is really what it is an ETA 2893-2, which is fine, but it's the whole watch itself. 5850. You can find watches with that kind of movement for a lot cheaper. Starting the lawnmowers now, so it's going to be a little noisy. Anyway, so I thought, well, let me look at another GMT. There's Nav Timer GMT 41. I like it. I like the idea of having it was a pilot's watch with a computer on a circular computer that pilots use. I used to use one when I flew. All right, now, as far as a GMT is concerned, the thing I like about it is very clean. You can tell at a glance what's going on here. The Naptime GMT is a very crowded dial on it. The Heritage Dual Time is a very clean dial. The HMC 809 is a H. Moser made rocket, H. Moser movement. And the thing is H. Mosers have the Straumann hairspring and the Straumann balance wheel. So they're really a good movement. 19,500 or 19,900 is a lot more, but still. And that may be, in fact, I hope that's not, but that may be Swiss francs instead of dollars, but anyhow. So there's another one. Here you have a really popular one, but I wish they would say, this has got an ETA, say this is what it is. Whatever Breitling did said, well, this is what we did to it, and so now it's a Breitling 32. That's fine. But it's important, I think, and this is something that always sort of bugged me about Breitling. Then they have some of their own too, and they charge a lot more for it. So they could charge a lot less for one with an ETA-based movement. That's me though. So anyway, like both watches. Okay, finally, the final two are the big pilot's watch. IWC is known for its pilot's watches. And one that I liked is called a Big Pilot's Watch 43 Spitfire. The 82-100 caliber is an IWC caliber. Again, here you have a fairly straightforward three-hander, no date, movement, with a great big crown for for the old-timey pilots and stuff. And there's this other brand, a German brand called Tutima, that I like a whole lot. Now, it does have, the Tutima 330 has an ETA base. I know that. The price, though, is $1,600, which is a lot less. And okay, so something's got the Tutima 3300 has an ETA base, okay, but they're charging it at that price. And the thing about Tutima, they're very well made watches. Rolf Lang used to be the guy who was teaching watchmakers at Tutima, and he told me a lot about the kind of a very good company that's overlooked, underrated. This is one, the Grand Flieger, is a big pilot, I guess. Anyway, that's my take on it, and I know a lot of other people say, well, this is what you should have said, instead of this, or how dare you even consider another watch than my favorite that happens to be a bestseller. Well, that happens. Okay. Anyway, this is an opportunity to subscribe if you like. And until next time, this is Bill Sander for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.